I'm a big believer that you only need about 12 articles to actually run a six-figure business. Because there's certain content that does different things. So, for example, how-to guides are really good at building trust with an audience. There's other articles that are really good at building links and things if you want SEO. Case studies, like testimonial guides and things, they're really good at converting sales. So in reality is you don't need a heap of content. A lot of people are trying to do it from an SEO perspective where they're trying to do all that keyword research and just target things that people are searching for. That makes sense, but you don't need all of those things right away. If you are selling to a customer, you know there's certain conversations that you've had again and again and again. That's the content you start with. Because first of all, it means you don't have to have that conversation again because you've got content that does that for you. Plus it means you can talk from one-to-one to one-to-many.
In this episode of Business Growth, we're going to be talking about how to use content marketing to really grow your business. Now, this is going to be a two-part episode. And part one, we're going to be talking about content marketing. And you're going to learn all kinds of things. For example, you're going to learn exactly what types of content works best for your business, how to get that content, which, hint, it's a lot easier than you think once you hear his strategy. And then in the bonus, you're going to actually hear the tactical piece, which is using Facebook ads to grow your content marketing. And you're going to get the nuts and bolts of that. So one, just so you know, you're not going to have to opt in and go for anything that's going to give you an email address just to get part two, the bonus Facebook marketing piece. No, you're going to see that as the next episode. And we're trying to make that as easy as possible for you. Now, as we jump into this episode, I want to set the stage and I want to help you to understand a little bit more about Daines Hutt. So he reached out to me through email. And it was one of those things where I get emails and a lot of the time, if I don't know who the person is and they have a rather lengthy email, I'm going to look at that and say, okay, cool. And I do respond, but it may not catch my attention. Well, he definitely caught my attention. We'll say it kind of stopped me and made me think, okay, wow, this guy's got some skills. I need to reply as quick as possible. So you're going to hear about what he is doing in specific emails to get attention. You're going to hear about his background in sales, and then you're going to understand from Daniel what we're talking about today. So let's both dive into this episode and hear from Daniel about content marketing. BG83 Signpost 1. Up next, you're going to hear about the 3 elements to get new leads for your content. And in fact, these elements are a lot easier to implement into your business, things that you might not even know. So let's hear about those elements that you can add to your content.
Today, I'm just going to talk about the one that's called Amp My Content, which is all about content promotion. A lot of people are creating content out there that just isn't doing anything for their business. Here's the crazy thing is traffic is only a benefit of having content. I just recently wrote an article. It's this huge guide. It's like 28,000 words or something. But it's how we promote our articles to a cold audience, people who've never heard of us, using paid ads. And for every $1 we spend, we make $22 back in return. So I want to break down that entire process and how it works so that if you're using content in your business, and especially if you're a small business or you're time poor, there's just not enough time to do everything. At least this way you can go out and bring new people to you. They can read your content, you can convert, you can make sales. So you have like a little flywheel running, but you can scale up to as much as you want, basically.
Okay. And then, so our audience knows that the part 2 is we're going to be laying out the exact action steps and additional things. So I want to let you listeners know, we're not going to tease you and make you opt in or wait weeks and weeks and weeks for part 2. You're going to see that in the next episode. So feel free to jump back and forth between these 2 episodes. But now let's get into part 1, which is how you actually turn that $1 into $22, and let's pull back the curtains on the content and all those pieces.
Cool, man. So like I said, a lot of people are they're not really using content as they should. We replicate what we see, and a lot of big sites have got 25 writers, and they're basically running the news site model. they churn out a lot of content because the way they get paid is via viewership on advertisements and things like that. So they will happily get you to come back again and again and again to do that. Whereas if you're a small business, you don't have time to write all those things, and you're trying to churn out all this content, and no one's reading it, and it gets a little bit overwhelming and depressing. So you're putting out this high-value content, and you offer a service or a business. So we need to get that in front of people. So the main thing that we're going to do, obviously, is we're going to run paid ads to that content, and ideally that content is then going to convert people to a subscriber. And then at some point, that subscriber will become a customer. It's actually really simple. There's just the 3 parts: the advert, the article, and then whatever follow-up you have in place.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
It does. I think all of us are hungry to understand the types of content you write and what makes the content actually impactful so that someone is going to be glued to it.
Awesome. So with anything in advertising, there's a connection between 3 stages: the advert, like where they land, the landing page, and the offer. And if you can improve any of those things, it directly affects the results on each part. So, for example, not a lot of people realize, but most paid ads start off at a loss. For every $4 you spend, you make kind of $1 back. And so a lot of people stop with paid ads early on because they just think it doesn't work for them. Or they don't understand if the ad is profitable because they don't know their numbers and things like this. So right away, like at the start in this first part, you have to have good content. It's pointless just sending traffic to content that's weak or is not collecting a lead, because then it's going to cost you a lot of money to send across. And because it's not converting, that's going to directly affect how much you can spend and things like that. So a lot of the content that we share is usually a how-to guide or a case study or something like that. Basically, it's an article that I've published, and I know that it converts a reader to a subscriber. So there has to be some kind of method there, and I'll talk about the method as well. The thing is, writing, I've got an article on this as well, and I'll share it later on. The best content out there, it actually only has, we did a heap of research on this, it only has about 9 elements, kind of like 9 tick boxes. And if you can meet those elements, or even half of them, your content is going to be almost twice as effective. So even if you're only getting like 100 visitors to a page, it's going to convert more of those visitors, which is more often more impactful than doubling the traffic. And please feel free to stop me, like if I ramble or anything, because like I said, I am midway through a coffee. It's early morning here.
No problem. So I want to pull back the curtains a little bit. You're mentioning that you're writing a how-to guide. Are you finding the how-to guides or like the ultimate guides, Neil Patel writes those or whatever it may be. Are you finding those to be the very best types of content?
Usually they convert better. And also, if you think of the audience that it will appeal to, they're also a much warmer audience. Because if someone wants to read an article on how to guide in reality is a transformation. It's taking them from a state of being where they are now to where they want to be, where they've achieved something or moved past a problem, etc. So most Google searches are usually for some kind of how-to solution. How do I do this? How do I do that? And then after that, they're searching for, like purchase options, things like that. My how-to guides convert anywhere from about 15% to about 85% of readers, because it's so high value and it builds a lot of trust and a lot of authority and reciprocity with the audience that they convert really, really well. So usually I wouldn't run traffic to content that's just like an offer page unless the offer is converting really well. But a how-to guide, if that comes up in your newsfeed and you're kind of bored and it's you see it's an article, straight away your defenses are down because it's high value. You're like, oh yeah, I'll click on that and read that. People who do this really well are Hotjar and Ahrefs. They're doing really well at the moment at promoting content through like Facebook ads and stuff that they see. And the reason is it's because it's a really low, it's really easy to get the yes, because people, they know they're not going to get sold when they come across. They're just going to get value. So that's why I will push how-to guides, case studies, possibly white papers if I was going to target a specific subset of audience, maybe journalists or influencers and things like that. But yeah, pretty much that bread and butter of your content is how-to guides. It's just that most businesses don't realize that's what they have. For example, if you're a surf company and you've got like a buyer's guide for wetsuits, in reality, that is a how-to guide because you're teaching them to understand what they need for certain conditions for where they live and then to make a choice to buy, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm, totally.
Yeah, so we're basically just using how-to guides. It's probably 90% of the content that we have on our website.
Okay. So how are you picking what to write about? Because there's a plethora of things. What's your filter to decide, okay, this topic within my business is the best one to write about? What's your filter for that?
I'm a big believer that you only need about 12 articles to actually run a six-figure business. Because there's certain content that does different things. So, for example, how-to guides are really good at building trust with an audience. There's other articles that are really good at building links and things if you want SEO. Case studies, like testimonial guides and things, they're really good at converting sales. So in reality is you don't need a heap of content. A lot of people are trying to do it from an SEO perspective where they're trying to do all that keyword research and just target things that people are searching for. That makes sense, but you don't need all of those things right away. If you are selling to a customer and you know there's certain conversations that you've had again and again and again, that's the content you start with. Because first of all, it means you don't have to have that conversation again because you've got content that does that for you. Plus it means you can talk from one-to-one to one-to-many, you know? So a lot of people, you'd be surprised, don't have this content in place. They start content marketing and they start writing about, 10 things the Batman movie taught me about social media and stuff like that because they're just trying to replicate news sites. When in reality, all you need to do is talk about, you understand your audience and the pain that they're in right now and how to get them from where they are now to where they need to be. So really easy thing is just talk to your customers. If you're already making sales, it makes it a bit easy because you have an understanding of your audience. Otherwise, you can go out and do research. Forums are great for this because you can see topics that are coming up again and again. You can see topics that are trending. So that gives you an idea of like a pulse on the marketplace. Seriously, they're super untapped and people are not really using forums correctly. They go in there and try and market and then they get kicked out. But if you go in there and interact and actually learn who your customer is and what they want, it's so simple to do. What I really like to do is I like to do interviews. So I will interview people in 3 stages. I will interview a customer, someone who's already got past that problem and why they decided to maybe go with us. I will interview people who've got the problem right now, and then I'll interview people who don't even realize they have the problem. And then that way I can create kind of a story, a narrative that I can speak to people who are very cold right now who don't even understand the problem exists, all the way to people getting that transformation. I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a brilliant strategy. And so I think for all of our listeners, most people that are running a business, we'll call it sub $1 million a year, are really good at taking care and understanding the customer and understanding the problem. They're typically not as good about helping the people that don't even realize that they have a problem. Like that piece is typically someone that's a lot more savvy in a business. Have you found the same?
Oh yeah, totally. Like, it's funny, isn't it? There's always kind of plateaus that you can tell where someone is at based on their communications, so as soon as someone starts to understand the person who doesn't even know they have the problem yet, you can tell they're going to scale super fast.
I think the same goes for when you're having a conversation with someone and I'm trying to be aware of this, and I have not mastered the skill, but
Yeah.
when you talk with someone that is an expert in their industry, and not necessarily marketing or business, but someone that's an expert in their industry, they're able to explain the most complex things with the fewest and most simple words. Whereas someone that is just grasping or they're just getting there, they often overcomplicate or they try and sound a lot more important than they are.
Totally. And I've been in that situation, you know.
I feel like I'm in the situation all the time. Like I'm trying to get over it.
When it comes to content, again, like there's those elements that you need to tick, those tick boxes. And simplicity is one of those because it makes it like exactly what you said. Someone is more of an authority if they can say it more simply, if they can say it in less words, if they could explain it to a child. But in reality, that comes down to the editing process. So I'll write a post and it'll be full of all different terminology and things like that. And I will go through and edit it again and again and again. And I actually have a sweep of edits that we do that are literally to do just that. How can I say it with less? How can I say it more simply? How can I help make this flow easier? Because once you do that with practice, and like if you've been researching and interacting and interviewing your audience, certain terminology that they'll use that'll keep coming up, but you'll be like, oh, I haven't even touched on this. And yet it seems to be a pain point in their mind that as someone who's an expert in the topic, I didn't even think about. Because like you are, without meaning to, you are many steps removed from your customer because your experience and depth is much deeper. So if you can get back to kind of back to basics and really understand them, it helps you really connect. Because a lot of people, they don't realize, but like most websites convert 2% of visitors to sale. The reason they make those sales is because that 2% makes up the warm audience who are ready to buy. The only reason they're buying is because they're pretty much close to buying anyway. Whereas if you can communicate and talk to people who are further removed, suddenly the audience is huge. It's not just the other 98%. It's the colder and colder you can get, or the further removed from the problem, it's almost like exponential growth. So the beauty is no one's targeting them, so it's even easier and cheaper to actually get in front of those people.
Up next, you're going to hear about the 3 elements to get new leads for your content. And in fact, these elements are a lot easier to implement into your business, things that you might not even know. So let's hear about those elements that you can add to your content.
There is just 3 elements really to this. We have an advert that takes someone to a blog post, and then that person opts into an offer on that blog post. And then there's some kind of nurture sequence. Of the different elements, I won't go into all of them, but a big one obviously is you need trust to get someone to buy. And the way to get people's trust is either kind of like the quality of the content or the depth of the content, but it's also if you can get them to take a small action. So Cialdini talks about it in a book called Influence. He talks about a lot of these elements, which we draw on when we're writing. If you can get someone to take, I think it's just a small step, they're almost 40% more likely to take a bigger step. So I see a lot of businesses, they don't want to collect an email list, but the reality is, even if you never emailed them, they are 40% more likely to buy from you physically in store because they've already said yes and made a small commitment, which kind of like blows their mind when they understand it. So in the content that we use a specific method. Most people, again, will only get about 2% of their traffic to convert. And like we said, we're getting 15 to 85%. So we're making that traffic even more effective. And I can break down those methods and things like that in just a sec. But does that make sense?
It does. Let's, I think we're all hungry to hear some of those methods.
Okay. So first thing, you have to have good content. Like I said before, you can't just drive traffic to a piece of content that doesn't perform. It doesn't make sense. You know, it's if you imagine a retail store, it's like getting a busload of people and taking them to a new trainee who doesn't even know where the stock is, right? So you have to have good content, and we cover all this in the article. It's a big guide. The next thing is we use, have you heard of content upgrades before?
Absolutely, but I'm not sure if all of our audience has, so let's throw that at them.
Totally. So we use a variation on that. We call it a hyper-specific next step offer. So there's a reason for this. A content upgrade is where in an article there might be a call to action to get a bonus that's relevant to the reader. So it might be, if you're listening to a podcast and you're on the website, you could click on a link and you can get a transcription, like a PDF that you could then read at your leisure, something like that. And they get really good opt-ins. But the method we use is similar, but it's a little bit more advanced. So the trick is in the name. It's hyper-specific, and it's the next step. So we only make opt-in offers that are unique to each article. We don't reuse them or recycle them. We just make it just for that thing. And the idea is it's the next step that they want to take. So they're super excited. They read this piece of content and they want to take action. For example, I have an article on this, how to make these and everything else, and it goes through all the steps. But our offer is, hey, do you want like 5 2-minute videos that walk you through how to set up the software, how to make the thing, how to do this? And so people convert like at 60%. Because it makes sense. They just got really excited and all the information is there in the article. But it's like, hey, if you want to follow it even faster, here's these like 5 short videos. And there's no pitch or anything like that. So the reason they work, like I said, they're unique to each piece of content. They're the next thing that they want to take. And then there's a little psychology built in as well. So there's no email form on the page. Instead, it'll be a piece of text or something like that saying, hey, do you want this bonus? And when you click on it, the email opt-in form appears. Again, this is that principle of commitment and consistency where they click the button so they started to take an action, so they're 40% more likely to continue and take that action. So by getting them to click on that button or that call to action, straight away our opt-in rates are going to be even higher. We only ask for one piece of information. We just ask for the email because for every box that you ask them to fill in, it drops. The chances of them actually converting drops considerably. Here's the crazy thing though. If you then asked for that other information afterwards, maybe you wanted their phone number and name and things. Because they've already clicked the button and they've already given you their email, about 80% of the people will go fill in the box. So there's an example in the article where we talk about it's a website called Investor Carrot, and they used to have an opt-in form that had like 26 boxes to fill in. And they followed the same method of doing this, where they had a button to press, and then it was just an email request. Then it would take them to a new page where it asked for all those details. Around 80% of their audience would carry on and fill in the information. But by making it very simple to take just one action on the front end, they had like a 40% lift in leads. So hopefully that makes sense.
Absolutely. That totally makes sense. And I think all of our listeners can look at their sales cycle and understand what the problems are. And I want to recap because there's a couple valuable things. One, for listeners, definitely use the interview method that he's speaking about to understand very, very clearly who the customer is, second, the problem, and then the people that don't even realize the problem. Those 3 different types of people. As we wrap up this section of the podcast, remember, we're going to have a bonus episode. And the bonus episode is going to be talking about the tactical approach of running Facebook ads to your content marketing. I want to let you know, some of those strategies are a little bit advanced. So you may need to slow the episode down or you may need to re-listen, but it's definitely worth listening to. And inside of those strategies, there are things that you can definitely apply right away to your business. So go to the next episode with Daniel, the bonus episode, so you can hear how to actually implement this.